Hello and welcome to Ascend's Aviation 2020 video interview. This week I'm delighted to introduce Eddie Pianczyk, who is Director and Head of Ascend Consultancy. So Eddie, after a turbulent 2008, what's the outlook for 2009?
Well, 2009 is going to be a little bit different. We've had an economic downturn before, we've had oil price spikes and we've had traffic reductions. This time around we have something slightly different. We have pretty much a liquidity crunch ongoing and a lack of cash in the system, and that's probably going to change things for a lot of our manufacturers, a lot of the airlines, a lot of the leasing companies, a lot of the finance houses and how they do business this year.
And in terms of financing, what's the outlook?
Well, we've talked in the past about a funding gap. We have a strong number of deliveries due this year, and if we look at where the capital is coming from, we can see some potential issues there and shortfalls. We don't know how big the funding gap is at the moment. A lot of this depends upon how many aircraft are going to be built.
Do you think all deliveries are likely to be fulfilled this year?
Well, we were looking at about 1,300 aircraft at the start of last year in terms of what 2009 had in store. That number has now been reduced, according to our records, to about 1,050. We're expecting to see Airbus deliver about 440, 450 aircraft. We expect to see Boeing deliver about 430, and we have Embraer maybe delivering about 140 and Bombardier about 50. This is jet aircraft. Now, if all those aircraft are delivered, it's about 100 less than there were in 2008. Then we expect to see some issues regarding getting the financing in place. As it is, it's about 200 aircraft less than was originally forecast. So things are moving in the right direction. And of course, if the manufacturers don't build the aircraft, then of course there won't be any need to finance them. So there is pressure in terms of reducing the number of deliveries.
What do you think the outlook is in terms of demand?
Demand, well, the traffic has scaled back, and at the moment the airlines are very busy trying to match their inventories with what traffic is out there. And I think the ones that will succeed in that are the ones that are going to fare the best. Those that end up with overcapacity and don't really appreciate the challenges out there are probably going to find it more of a struggle.
And oil prices, a great deal of volatility last year. What do you think the outlook is for 2009?
Well, we were certainly taken around the houses in 2008. I think a prudent forecast for 2009 would be somewhere in the $50 a barrel mark, and at those kind of prices we can see the industry, the airline industry specifically, making some form of recovery.
Okay, how much have lease rates changed over the past, say, 6 months?
Lease rates, we've seen a fair bit of variety there, and of course it depends on the aircraft type. But I guess we're looking at anywhere between 10 and 30% decreases so far. I don't think that story has unfolded yet, and there's probably another 10-15% to go this year. Again, a lot of it depends upon how quickly inventory is taken out of the marketplace and whether we get the supply and demand balance in check.
And what about aircraft values? What changes have we seen there?
Well, values, that's been quite an interesting one. Certainly in the past 6 months, let's say at the start of, or the middle of 2008, we had a market value premium over base values by about 20%. That has disappeared, and in fact it's gone some the other way now by about at least 5%. So we've seen changes of 20-25% in market values. And again, we expect to see that continue. There's nothing really to suggest that it'll do otherwise. It'll probably take 18 months for the fleets and inventories to rebalance. So perhaps there's another 10-15% to go this year. But there are so many variables out there. That's a picture that can change as each month passes.
Have there been any particular aircraft that have been particularly badly hit in value terms?
Well, I guess the oil price spike introduced us to the real inefficiencies of the oldest aircraft. So that's where we've seen most of the change. The older 1980s, 1990s vintage equipment, they're the ones that have probably been hardest hit. The younger wide bodies have probably been less severely hit. In production narrow bodies, again, less severely hit. It's been the old aircraft that have taken most of the knocks.
Are many of those likely to end up out in the deserts? How many aircraft do you think are going to be parked this year?
Yeah, well, I think the desert storage at the moment is running at about 2,200. It wouldn't surprise me to see that figure rise to 3,000 as this year carries on. I think a lot of airlines have already announced the fact that they're stepping down some of their capacity issues, and with the new deliveries coming on stream, 3,000 is not a figure that's going to be far off the mark. just really to add on top of that, a lot of these issues and many more we'll be covering in our Viewpoint newsletter. The next issue will be due, the first one for 2009 will be due the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Thanks very much, Eddie.
You're welcome.